I'm super excited to announce that the next speaker is Schäfer Kleinert, and he was actually sponsored by GF Piping for flying over all the way from his home country all the way to Shaftesbury. And thank you so much, GF Piping, for this generous sponsorship. Just wanted to throw that out there. Schaefer is a dedicated international student who enjoys learning about diplomacy and rhetorical ideas. He loves learning about international relations and finding solutions to the world's most pressing problems. And as a result, that's the main topic of his speech today, which is how to be an ultimate problem solver. Please, everybody, welcome Schaefer to the stage.
I'd like to tell you a story. This story is about a 12-year-old boy who lived in a small city in southwest China. This is also the story about an old couple who lived in a village in the mountains by that city. Every few weeks, the boy and his family would go and they would stay at the house of the old couple. He would spend his days climbing mountains, finding caves, climbing trees, and coming back in time for dinner. He called the old couple Yeye and Nai, grandfather and grandmother, even though his real grandparents were far away. He would walk with the old man among the walnut trees and talk about whatever was on his mind. And he would sit with the old woman in the small kitchen by the fire she cooked noodles over and listen to her tell stories. On that mountainside, everything felt right, except one thing. The old couple and the whole village had no sanitary toilet, just an open pit. And one day, he asked his father why. His father kneeled down, looked him in the eye, and said, "Son, they don't have a toilet because they don't have the resources to build one. Composting toilets are hard to build, and they don't know how, but we do. Would you like to help me build one for them?" And the boy thought about that. He imagined how happy the couple would be and how much easier it would be not to have to walk uphill to the pit, and he said yes. So his father consulted a nonprofit for the best design. The boy made a model out of Lego, and off they drove, 3 hours through the mountains and valleys, up to the village. When they arrived, the boy showed them the Lego model. His father explained to the old couple what they were trying to do, and the old couple's faces lit up as they thanked them over and over for being willing to care. So the boy and his father, they went and they enlisted some help and bought some bricks and concrete and gravel, and they built the village's first self-contained composting toilet. Simple, right? But what seems straightforward for an adult was a life lesson for that young boy. He had seen a problem and he had taken steps to solve it. He learned that problems, even big ones, were solvable, and that is a lesson that he remembers for the rest of his life. I would know. I am that boy. Right now, the world is on fire. Just look around you. The world's in the middle of over a dozen separate conflicts. We're still recovering from the worst pandemic of our lifetimes. The things we do to just live normal lives are wrecking the planet, and we're becoming more dependent on technology we don't understand to make ourselves more socially isolated than ever before, which is probably why we're suffering a massive mental health crisis. Meanwhile, countries are pointing nuclear weapons at each other and name calling. Corruption, displacement, inequality, poverty, 16-year-olds yelling at the World Economic Forum, and oh joy, it's an election year. Every single one of these things is constantly shouted at us through billboards and advertisements and social media. It feels overwhelming. But humans adapt and continue to find ways to live with the constant noise. How we interpret and cope with the world and its issues is called mindset. Mindset is, at its core, how we translate information to belief and belief to action. In the world on fire, the information we're presented with comes in the form of near constant problems. Which mindset we have determines which problems we choose to ignore, which ones we choose to yell about, and which ones we choose to solve. There are three mindsets we can develop in a world on fire. Two of them make the world's problems seem more hopeless, and the third unites us in solving them. Let's start with the first mindset, the inability mindset. The inability mindset says, I can't do anything about the problems around me. Its response to the world on fire isn't to put out fires. It's to simply believe that problems are inevitable and unsolvable, so you might as well doom scroll. And quite obviously, that isn't helping anyone. Of course, there are things we're all incapable of doing. Recognizing true inability isn't the issue, but it becomes one when we label problems we don't know how to solve as unsolvable and discourage others from trying. So what if you do believe you can do something about the problems around you? Well, then you have the second mindset, the ability mindset. The ability mindset says, I believe I can do something about the problems around me, and I care deeply about it. If the inspirational posters were right, then the ability mindset is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. But it's not. That's 42. And the real problem with the ability mindset is that its primary attribute is belief, not action. And belief is good, but many people stop there because believing is easy while problem solving is hard. And when you stop short of actually solving problems, you tend to head down one of two paths, apathy and activism. Let's start with apathy. Apathy is when you only care about the problems you can relate the most to. It's when you're walking down the street and choose not to pick up a piece of trash or choose to walk past a beggar on the street corner before loaning your friend money you know you'll never get back. Sure, you could pick up that piece of trash or help the beggar out, but you don't because you can relate more to your friend or where you need to go. That's apathy. Activism, on the other hand, is less obvious. When you care more about the world's problems than its people, you oftentimes don't end up solving problems. You end up yelling about the problems instead, because it's always easier to yell than to do. That's activism. But Schäfer, you might say, I thought this talk was about how you become an effective problem solver. Isn't activism a way to do that? No, because the primary goal of activism isn't to solve problems. Its goal is to publicize them. Activists plan to publicize a problem enough that somebody else comes in and solves it for them. So why doesn't it work? Because when we all know about a problem, hearing it yelled at us over and over through every conceivable medium doesn't make us want to solve the problem more. It makes the problem seem more unsolvable. This is where the hopeless narratives of the world on fire come from. Activists with good intentions. Activism fuels inability, apathy, and other mindsets that don't solve problems. So here's my first takeaway for you. Belief alone is not sustainable. Belief alone does not and cannot keep the world running. Sustainability is a word with two definitions. The second one is the one you're familiar with, environmental sustainability. But the first and primary definition is this: the ability to be maintained at a certain rate or level. We think about climate change and global warming, but the reality is that before we can worry about environmental sustainability, we need to be able to sustain community in the face of the world on fire. Because without community, problems isolate us. And in isolation, problems are hardest to solve. So, how can you solve problems? How can you push back against the isolation of the world on fire? Well, problem solving takes action, not just individually, but action in community. And thankfully, there's a third mindset that does just that. Introducing the agency mindset. I just sounded like Tim Cook, didn't I? The word agency is one that means to be able to act and have an impact on issues outside yourself. This is the attribute of some of the world's most impactful people. Think Thomas Edison, Steve Jobs, J. Robert Oppenheimer. All of them believed that their respective problems were solvable, but they didn't stop at belief. They saw a problem, believed it could be solved, connected with others, and tried to solve the problem. While the inability and ability mindsets are focused on the self and the problem, the agency mindset is people focused. You care about the problems affecting those around you because you care about those around you. You care about community. So how does that relate to problem solving? Well, to solve problems in community, you need to be a part of community. You need to reach out, talk to others, understand what they're going through. That simple act pushes back against the isolation of living in a world on fire. So how do you practice the agency mindset? Well, it's simple. Every day, ask yourself these two questions. Who can I connect with today? And how can I help those around me? It doesn't matter if you're connecting with a friend, with a neighbor, or somebody at school or work. The simple act of connection is the first step to being an effective problem solver. So here's my second takeaway for you. To be the ultimate problem solver, practice taking action in community. And even if you don't succeed, it's a win-win. Because if you fail, you're more unified. And if you succeed, there's a greater chance of a sustainable solution. So now only one question remains. How do you actually use the agency mindset to solve problems? Well, the answer lies in a story. The story about the pen that defined the space race. It's the early 1960s. At the height of the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union, and NASA has a problem. Traditional ballpoint pens rely on gravity to draw ink to the ballpoint, making them ineffective in zero gravity. So astronauts have been using pencils, but pencils present a set of problems. First, they smoke, meaning an astronaut could misread some key information, mess up some calculations, burn up on reentry, and die. Second, they break, meaning an astronaut could get a pencil bit stuck in their eye, mess up some calculations, burn up on reentry, and they die. Finally, they're flammable, meaning an astronaut could have a pencil set fire to their cabin, burn up, die, and have to go through any and all reentry in spiritual form. Suffice it to say, NASA needed to find a less terrifying writing instrument to save lives and unnecessary paperwork. So they approached a man named Paul C. Fisher to make it for them. Fisher was the founder of his successful pen company, and he took up the challenge. He worked for several years alongside engineers Erwin Rapp and Friedrich Schäfer, investing over $1 million of his own money, and finally, in July 1965, he was ready. His final design could work in zero gravity, underwater, in extreme temperatures, and on all surfaces. Not only that, but he decided to mass produce his pen for the general public. In fact, I have one here with me right now. So what can the story of the Fisher Space Pen teach us about how we simplify and tackle the problems we face every day? Well, the answer is that Fisher used a three-step framework for problem solving that can be applied to any problem. These three steps are understand, iterate, and deliver. First, you need to understand the problem you're trying to solve. Fisher was well acquainted with how ballpoint pens work. He ran a successful pen company, but the space pen was different. He needed to make a pen that saved lives, so he made sure that he understood what NASA required of him and designed accordingly. For more ordinary problems, ask yourself a few simple questions. Why does the problem exist? Why hasn't it been solved before? And how does it impact people? The second step, after you understand the problem, is to iterate the ideas you have about it. Fortunately, there's an easy way to do this, at least if you're the type of person who has friends. It's called the PRI loop. PRI stands for present, reflect, and improve. Present your ideas to a group of people that you trust to give you honest feedback about them. Reflect on their feedback, and improve or throw out your ideas. Now, why is the PRI loop in that order? Two reasons. First, you should present your imperfect ideas to others just in case they're terrible, minimizing wasted time. And secondly, because to be frank, the RIP loop just sounded a bit morbid. Fisher demonstrated this exact thing by iterating with Rath and Schäfer over and over until they far exceeded NASA's requirements. Finally, after you understand and iterate your solution, you should deliver it to the people who can have the most impact with it. Why is delivery important? Because very often, we're not in the best position to help others with our own ideas. I can build a composting toilet system by myself. There will very often be others with more time, resources, and manpower who can do much more good than we can. So when you have a solution, find the people who can make the most impact with it and give it to them. No strings attached. How did Fisher demonstrate this? By selling his pen to the general public at an affordable price. He didn't need to. He could have sold his revolutionary space pen for as much as he wanted, but he wanted to. Because if you could help somebody out to solve some of the problems they live with, then you should, even if you can personally benefit more otherwise. So here's my final takeaway for you. To be the ultimate problem solver, solve problems by understanding, iterating, and delivering. These three steps work for any problem in any situation. These three steps turn a problem you knew you could solve into a problem you now know how to solve. J.R.R. Tolkien wrote in The Lord of the Rings, "Some believe that only great power can hold evil in check, but that's not what I have found. It is the small, everyday acts of the ordinary that keep the darkness at bay." It doesn't take somebody powerful or brilliant or talented to make a difference in the world on fire, to push back against the hopeless narratives that surround us. All it takes is one person reaching out, connecting with others, and asking, how can I help the people around me? To be the ultimate problem solver, understand the problems facing those around you and care enough that you can't help but solve them, not by yourself, but in community. Iterate the ideas you have, and finally, deliver your solution to those who can have the most impact with it. And now, I'm delivering this